Hello, my name is Ben, and I am one of your hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. But this week we're going to violate that rule yet again. We have a special episode for you this week about my experiences at PAX this year, albeit a little late due to some unforeseen circumstances of a technical nature and also of a health-related nature because I've had a serious flu. I'm just starting to feel like I've gotten over it, so it's kind of put a dent in doing the things that I need to do to get the show out. So I apologize for how late this retrospective episode is, but better late than never. But first, if you haven't checked out our Substack, I have been writing a couple of reviews lately. If you want the full details of my assessment of this game, you can go to our Substack, which is substack.com/@2vaguepodcast. We house our show notes, and then I put in links to the show on Podbean, the episodes there, so you can look at Substack, see when we've got a new episode, if you're not one for the other social media stuff. And then we've got reviews, which I'm starting to write. I've got two up there so far. One, which is for Shadow of the Ninja Reborn, published a couple of weeks ago. And then this week we've got Deathbound by Trialforge Studio, which is a Brazilian studio, published by Tate Multimedia. I've invested, I would say, about 30 hours into it. Deathbound is a game that has been promoted as a Souls-like, but in my playing of it, I don't know if that is 100% accurate. There is sort of a difficulty spike that occurs at the very beginning of it, and you've got to kind of get a handle on how you're going to approach figuring out how to beat the game. But I wouldn't call it overly difficult. You can figure out ways to get around this. It's not punishingly difficult. It kind of gives sort of Hellgate London vibes as far as the feel of it. It's sort of a downfall of technology, though, in this case. There was a technology-based society that was plunged into this dark age, and now the story takes place in this setting. You play the character, the prisoner of 1,000 faces, but actually really 7, because you absorb 7 different essences throughout the game. Each one of these essences represents fighting style. What the big thing of the game is, you can equip up to 4 of these essences simultaneously. They will grant you bonuses based on their relationships. There are 2 kinds of bonuses, one which is a synergy and one which is a conflict. Synergies just give you straight up bonuses, and conflicts give you 1 positive and 1 negative that will impact your stats. It's pretty standard as far as some Souls-likes. I think what Deathbound does is it takes inspiration from Souls-likes more than it actually is a Souls-like. It took me about 1/3 of the way through the story before it really clicked for me. And when I started being able to morph between essences and manipulate the orientation to use those synergies and conflicts to my benefit, it dragged a little bit. But then, as I got more and more into it, the gameplay and more the combat than anything else really hooked me as far as being able to switch between these fighting styles. It felt really cool to do that. Let's do some 3-ups, 3-downs, and then we'll move on to PAX. I would say the music is fabulous. It's just amazing music. I wish there was more of it. You can go get the Deathbound soundtrack, but pretty short, probably about 30 minutes tops of music. But it was really well done. The voice acting was decent. Graphics are pretty darn good. There have been some people saying that it feels like a previous generation game. I played on the PlayStation 5. That being said, they would say it's a PlayStation 4 game. I don't necessarily agree with that. It is an independent game, so you're not going to have hyper-realism in this game. But anyway, the graphics are really good, but the big selling point for me playing this game is the combat system, being able to morph between these. It's a really fun sort of system. And then, of course, there's all sorts of other things that you find along the way, mapping out your skills and things. But I'll get into that, more details on that on the Substack review, so you can check it out there. And 3 downs. There was sort of a problem I had with the targeting system that I figured out eventually, but it's not overly obvious. Usually when I use a targeting system, it's pretty much on the entire time. But based on the compactness of these levels and the level design, a lot of times if you keep it on, it can kind of get in the way of what you're trying to do in your attacks. So I found that it was best to turn it on and off as needed. That maybe could have been tightened up a little bit. The next targeting, when it auto targets, it's not really 100%. I couldn't figure out why it was targeting what it was, because you couldn't target things behind walls, but you could target something and then go behind a wall and it would be targeted. There were cases where I defeated an enemy and the auto target switches to the next enemy, and that is underneath me, which is not the enemy I want to focus on. I want to focus on something in front of me. Minor things with that, with the targeting. There was also later on in the game when I had all of my essences, I played through the game twice. And the second time through, every once in a while, probably happened to me in my 30 hours about 2 or 3 times, there were instances where the perspective would shift to being inside one of the characters. Now, it was easily worked around. I could just walk back to where I had saved before, as long as I wasn't too far away from it. And these save points called phylacteries, those are where it would reset the perspective. There were also a couple of minor issues where later on I got stuck in walls too. But I mean, like I said, nothing super crazy game breaking. If I played by the rules and didn't walk through a wall intentionally, I was pretty safe. My only other criticism would be that I didn't get to use all my essences early enough. And I don't know if that's necessarily a down. Might have been something that came from balancing. I found that my second playthrough was much more enjoyable when I had, there was a New Game Plus mode that you have all of your essences that you find unlocked. And I had a lot more fun the second time through than I had the first time through. Yeah, definitely something if you want a solid, challenging game that has some very unique story elements and an interesting setting, fun combat. Check it out. You can find it. I'll put all the links in the show notes to the site that will take you to the various pages, including the Steam page. I would say definitely worth checking out. Not a must play, but if you like a challenging game and it's about $30, I think, on all the systems, I would say it's worth it. That is my review, my mini review of Deathbound. Details, check out the Substack article called It's Inspired by Don't Call It a Souls-like, a review of Deathbound on PS5. Let us know what you think. And now on to my experiences at PAX West 2024, the games I saw this year. All these games will have links to the various pages so you can check out the details of them. So I'm going to just give you my top level observations and not really glossing over, but sort of just summarizing my experiences with them. We'll start on the first day. I had an appointment at Ysbryd Games, which I don't know if I mentioned this before. Last year when I went to Ysbryd Games, I didn't know what that meant, but apparently it's Welsh for spirit or essence or ghost. The first game I played at the Ysbryd booth was a game called Love Eternal. What it's described as on their press kit is an atmospheric, narrative-heavy horror platformer that follows the character Maya, a suburban child stolen from her family by a lonely god. Maya must struggle to escape the ancient castle enclosed completely by chain mesh and bars. The horrifying secret of Maya's new prison is slowly revealed through seamlessly integrated cutscenes in a hand-drawn pixel art style. It's one of these you're changing gravity kind of games, so the platforming element from getting from point A to point B has to do with this being able to flip gravity and use certain points to change the way that power works. It's very easy to pick up if you like those types of puzzles. I got a little frustrated at certain points when I wasn't getting through a level, but if you like that kind of puzzly sort of thing, it's definitely something to check out. Love Eternal, developed by Bricka, who is also known as Toby Alden. The next game that I saw at the Ysbryd booth was a game called Everdeep Aurora. It's got an interesting sort of 3-4 color tops palette. Looks almost like a Nintendo, I would say a Game Boy era game. Very pixel art, done really well. You play a cat named Shell. So there is an apocalyptic meteor shower that's forced the population to settle underground. And Shell is a feline child who awakens to find her mother missing. Drill downward from the surface layer through a tile-based underground and discover Everdeep. I was told that it was more about the storytelling and the puzzle solving more than it's about combat. It's a lot of exploration. Really interesting style, really cool. I didn't play a ton of it, but check it out on Steam if you like this kind of, I would say, cozy story style of game. Definitely something you should check out. The next game I saw was a game called Ender Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist, which is a sequel to Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights. I met with Hiroyuki Kobayashi, who is the CEO and creative director. This game is published by Binary Haze Interactive, and the developer is AdGlobe and Livewire. I played a little bit of the previous game, Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Nights. I haven't played as much as I would have liked of it so far. I want to get through it before this game. But what I played of it was really, really great. You know, if you listen to the show, you know that I'm a big fan of Vanillaware games. And in talking with Hiroyuki, I asked him questions about stories that inspired him. And it's mostly like dark and ominous feeling stories, but very manga inspired. He also said Final Fantasy was a big inspiration. When I asked him about game inspirations, and I told him that it reminded me of Vanillaware, he said that was very much an inspiration. Also sort of Diablo 3 and other games like that. So I asked him what his favorite word is, but he gave me a favorite phrase of his, which is God is in the details. That is kind of an interesting perception, I think. And it actually makes a lot of sense when you see the game, at least the first one and also the second one. Very similar, beautiful art style. Definitely check it out when it comes out. I think it's in early access on Steam, but it says on the website that it will be released on January 23rd, 2025. So I guess that's the official releases then. But until then, if you haven't checked out Ender Lilies, definitely check that out. Then I went over to the Anshar Publishing booth, and I saw a couple of games over there at that booth. Jacob showed me 2 games. The first one being Coridden. The developer is Afnereld. Coridden is an action RPG where you sort of transform into defeated creatures. There's some tree things that build your characters, and he played with me. It's up to 3-player, a co-op heavy sort of game. Kind of got this isometric 3D presentation. It has sort of a Diablo look to it. Definitely wanted to see more story from it, but it was just a demo. Let's see, full release. It's going to be available on PC. It says platforms to be determined, so we'll see if it comes, but definitely check it out on Steam. And then Jacob showed me Jacob. I should just go with the name. I'll just say Jacob and apologize if I didn't get that right. But this other game from the developer called DVD Unicorns, it's called Bytebond. It gives me sort of a Marble Madness kind of vibe, but it's very cooperative. So you've got 2 different roly robots. We'll just call them roly robots. And you can transfer electricity between them, and they have different powers that you unlock as you go through these puzzles. According to the press kit, Bytebond is a cooperative puzzle game for 2 people where you travel through the interior of a computer and solve puzzles based on energy management. The basis of the gameplay is asymmetry between characters. One of them takes energy from the environment while the other one gives back that energy. The more energy the characters have, the larger they become. It's definitely a fun little puzzly game. I don't know how large this game is as far as number of levels, but Jacob and I played through 7 or 8 levels. It's definitely something that if you like puzzle cooperative type games, check it out. Then we'll go on to Rugrats Adventure in Gameland. And this was one of the games that was presented by the media indie exchange games, The Mix. It was just briefly shown. This Rugrats game, you can check it out on Steam, but it's very much like, it's in the Rugrats style, but it feels like one of those old sort of kids side-scrolling game where you play one of the Rugrats characters. So they see this commercial for a game and they pretend like they're in the video game of their own. A traditional looking platformer. Didn't play too much of it. Not really my speed, but if you like platformers, you might want to check it out. And especially if you like Rugrats. The next game that I saw was Deathland Drifters, which is in development. One of the developers that was at the show saw me walking around with my press badge and said, "Hey, check out our booth." And I said, "Okay." And what I saw was this game that has a really interesting concept. It's from Railgun Games, and it reminds me a lot of, I used to go to Battletech centers in Chicago, which are these places where you could go with your friends and have giant robot fights, but they were in these sit-down pods, really immersive. Each pod had all these different switches and controls, but it also had your standard joystick and throttle. There was also a game that they made called Red Planet that wasn't nearly as popular as Battletech, but it was one of my favorites. It was a Martian death race. If you have a chance to look up the Red Planet training video, it's got a star-studded cast of B-grade celebrities, including Weird Al Yankovic. Judge Reinhold's in it. Cheech Marin, I think, is in it. Just a whole bunch of weird, sort of like you'll go, "Oh, I know that guy. I know that guy." So anyway, back to Deathland Drifters. So this game reminds me of those types of games because it's a first-person shooter cooperative game where one of your characters is piloting the vehicle and the other characters are manning the gun turrets on this vehicle. The graphic style is sort of, I don't know how to explain it other than polygons, but it's a really unique looking graphic style to it. It's not super realistic. But yeah, Railgun Games, definitely check it out. It's still in development. I didn't have a chance to actually sit down and play, but it looked like people were having a lot of fun with it. Next, I stopped by and said hello to Daniel and Johnson. They have made some changes to their Corgi's Cozy Hike game. It was sort of a platformer, and now they've kind of made it into an open world experience. Still has the same graphic style to it, so that's exciting for them. That was fun, reconnecting. Hopefully we can get them on the show so they can talk about what they're doing with donating their funds to pet rescue stuff. I briefly stopped by the Ukiyo Studios booth to see what they brought. 9 Souls was the game that I was most interested in. Didn't have a chance to play it there, but I did get a chance to play this game called Infinity Bullets, which reminds me a lot of this classic arcade game by, I believe it was Capcom, called Forgotten Worlds, which came out in arcades in 1988. I remember having it on my Sega Genesis, but it was a really fun shooter. Very unique. The controls, 8-way joystick and a rotatable button called a roll button, which would allow you to adjust the aim of the gun as it rotated around you. Infinity Bullets is kind of like that as far as its presentation, but the guns will rotate around you automatically based on the direction you go. But then it's also got this element that's a vampire survivor sort of thing, where as you defeat things and collect coins, you get to select how you upgrade your bullets or your guns. It's my speed. I may check it out because I like Vampire Survivors, and I also like Forgotten Worlds a lot. And then if you have a chance to check out Nine Souls, that's also an interesting sort of platformer 2D side-scrolling in a very comic-looking presentation. Next, I stopped by and said hello. Well, actually, I stopped by, saw a Pacific Drive booth, and I was like, I need to tell them at the booth that that's probably my game of the year this year is Pacific Drive. So I said hello. They said, hey, we would love to be on the show if you want to send us an email or whatever. So hopefully I can get some of them on. I also met later one of the guys who worked on the music for that, but I'll get into it when I cover that game that he is doing independently. But then I ended up going to the Dread XP booth. I checked out a couple of games, Dread Delusion, Heartworm, and the Mortuary Assistant. The one that I played most of was Heartworm, and it kind of gave me an Alone in the Dark vibes, an older game I used to play on my PC. It felt a lot like that. It had a system where the character would show you on the screen. It sort of looked like Resident Evil or Dino Crisis, like that kind of item screen mixed with this sort of Alone in the Dark look. It felt a little slow, but I can see what they were going with, puzzly, but also the early Resident Evil kind of look to it too. But Heartworm, here's the description as it's specified on the Steam page. Pass through the threshold and enter a world born of memories. Defend yourself with your camera while solving death's mysteries in a reverent evolution of 90s survival horror, integrating both fixed cameras and over-the-shoulder perspectives. Definitely gave me that feeling. It is developed by Vincent Adinolfi, published by Dread XP. Definitely one I'm going to check out and see how that feels compared to those other games, but it looks like Vincent nailed it as far as that feeling, the 90s survival horror style of game. And the Mortuary Assistant is one you should check out if you like. It's pretty telegraphed. You do things with corpses, but then of course they come alive and sit up, and you're supposed to do things with souls while you're also doing things with embalming corpses. And they do stuff like talk to you. And if you like that kind of game, the horror, and actually this time of year, probably good to stream the Mortuary Assistant on Steam and let me know what you think. The next game that I saw was a game called Section 13. It is twin stick shooter kind of a game. It was originally called Blackout Protocol, but they had to change the name. You can play it solo or 3 players. Ocean Drive Studios. It's sort of a roguelike shooter kind of thing. And I went through several levels where I kind of had to get defeated by zombies and then start over again. But it definitely feels like it could be a fun game once you get into it. The gentleman that spoke to me was Shangshul Park. It was really interesting because once I played that game, I had to play it on a keyboard. I said, you know what, it would have been so much better with a joystick. And apparently they went out and got some joysticks. So that was kind of cool. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't have a chance to talk to the developer about anything other than the game. But what ended up happening was Shangshul told me that later on, after, they told me about the joystick sort of issue and the fact that they brought a joystick and asked me to come back if I wanted to play it again. I asked what their favorite word was, and he said joy, because he likes seeing people's joy through playing games, which makes sense. But then also he said, and my wife's name's Joy. so joy. Definitely something that we need a lot more of that in the world. Yep. So check out Section 13. I will put that into the show notes as well. Next, I went to go see the Behemoth. If you caught my interview episode, I got to interview Dan Paladin. Check out their website. They've got a big list of all the different, their roadmap for their new content. He couldn't tell me anything about the new game that they're working on, There's news for Alien Hominid Invasion, Alien Hominid HD, some new DLC for Castle Crashers coming out, an update for Battle Block Theater, and then also another update for Pit People. Keep an eye out on that. Look at their website. Definitely check it out. Their roadmap is actually a roadmap. Not foldable. It's on a phone in the graphic, but it is a roadmap. So anyway, and they've got a video there too. So Dan seems interested to be on the show, so I'm really excited about that. I'm going to probably reach out to him sometime in November and see if he wants to come on. So, and then finally on day one, Eric from Imaginary Games Studios said he was interested in checking out Path of Exile 2, which is what I got an invite for. And I've never played Path of Exile, so he was sort of riding shotgun with me while I played the game. It very much feels like a Diablo sort of feeling to it. You've got your different characters. Let's see, how many different characters? Warrior, Ranger, Huntress, Sorceress, Mercenary, Monk, Druid, Witch, and then apparently they got 4 other ones that are coming up with the 12 character classes. Journeying across a deadly continent, meeting multiple immersive cultures, facing off against evil, combat redefined, do battle with corrupted abominations and divine creations alike, wielding skills that can be used together in graceful combinations. It's got skill trees. It feels very much like a Diablo 3 style of game. Eric really liked the first one, and so he was interested in checking out the second one. I may actually check it out. Grinding Gear Games is the developer. And thank you to Kelly Chu, who showed us the game. Very hospitable to myself and Eric, who was just riding shotgun. That wraps up day one. Day two, the first game that I saw was, oh my gosh, this was such a cute game. I think I'm pronouncing this correctly. DORONKO. It's a Phoenix Incorporated published game developed by Namco during the 2023 rookie training program, Gyar, or Gyar Studio, which is an independent games label within Bandai Namco for its training folks. A training ground, try new stuff and try and develop games. It's known for a survival quiz city, but this game, which is available for free on Steam, from what I hear, it's coming to Switch. Not exactly sure when. The version I played, I believe, was a Switch version. It is this Pomeranian energy that feels a lot like Katamari Damacy to me. You're a dog in a house, and you are supposed to just basically mess up the whole house. And how you do that is you roll around in dirt and mud and paint and shake it all off everywhere. Based on how much damage you do to the house, you unlock additional things that you can use to find secret areas and secret things and unlock more stuff. And eventually you find all the stuff, and that takes you to the next level. There are only 3 levels available. I would really love to see a full version of this game at some point. Just playing through that first level was so much fun. I think I had an appointment at the same booth to see something else, but I just spent so much time playing DORONKO that just lost track of time. So definitely check that out. Available for free on Steam. Then I stopped by and played Pizza Bandit, which we talked about. I had an interview with Aaron Ko, and you don't know this yet, but we just recorded a show with him on it, on the word iteration. So that should be coming up in the next couple of episodes. Like I mentioned before, a lot of fun. Just think cover shooter or something to the effect of like a Gears of War-ish kind of shooter thing crossed with Overcooked, and you will have your Pizza Bandit. They're still working on it. It sounds like they got a lot of good feedback at PAX West this year, so looking forward to seeing that. Do all the stuff with the liking and putting it on the wish list and whatnot. And then Interrobang Entertainment spoke to Justin Woodward about Jay and Silent Bob Chronic Blunt Punch. I played a little bit of it, talked mostly to Justin more of the time, though, about the development and working with the View Askew folks on this. And then also they did a previous game, Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl is the first one that they worked on with the View Askew crew. And then Jay and Silent Bob Chronic Blunt Punch is the latest one that they're developing. It's one of those side-scrolling beat-em-up style games. Check out the trailer. It's got its unique sort of style. It doesn't look like the comics or any other style. It looks like it's a unique hand-drawn style. Looks really cool, though. And from what I played of it, it was a lot of fun. Justin had a lot of positive things to say about developing the game and working with the View Askew folks. Hopefully we can get Justin on at some point to talk about his experiences with this game. Check it out. And then also check out what Justin does with the mix, too, because that's a really cool kind of concept, kind of a networking for independent developers. The next game I saw was from a game company called Optilusion Games, and they had sort of, I don't want to say experimental, but they kind of felt more experimental style games. I checked out 2 of them. The first one I played was While Waiting, which is sort of a cozy game about waiting for stuff, which sounds weird, but there are some puzzly sort of elements in it where it's got a checklist of things that you want to do or should do while you're waiting. Really cute looking graphic style. And then they have this game called Pick Me, Pick Me. I was told it was sort of a player versus player dating game. That's all that I was given before I checked it out. But it is a game that's powered by AI. The whole premise is you go on dates and it's 2 players. Basically, you're having a date. They're asking you questions and you respond to those questions. And then the AI sort of builds on whatever your answer was for the next question. And it just goes back and forth until there's a winner. It was kind of an interesting game. I lost. Chris Cook, I believe, is the guy that I played against, and he beat me pretty soundly. But I mean, you know, he works with a game every day. Come on. They also said that there will be a voice option so you can talk. And I was like, ooh, if you would have had that going. It was really loud inside the building, so of course they couldn't do a lot with the voice activated interface. But yeah, I definitely would have been much better than typing stuff out. It's an interesting sort of experiment, I think, as far as a game. And it was a lot of fun to play. So check out those games on their website. So the next thing that I saw, I went to the Playism booth. Big selection of games this year. There were 6 different ones that were available. The ones that I remember the most of the 6 that I played, Nitro Express, which is a 2D side-scrolling action game by Greyfax Software, features cute assault weapon-wielding girls shooting up a storm in the streets of Japan. It was definitely one of those run-and-gun style games that was a lot of fun. The other game that I really liked was Homura Hime, which is a fight against archdemons possessed by deviant emotions. It's a third-person action game developed by Crimson Dusk, sort of an anime-style, 3-dimensional bullet hell gameplay feeling to it. I was really happy because I made it past the boss fight. I felt really proud of myself. The other games, I'll give you the descriptions of them. Outrider Mako, take on the role of Mako and her quest to seek out and subsequently deliver her deliverables, oddly enough, in this top-down view 2D action game developed by Azamondo Games. And then we've got Metalbringer, which is sort of a mech game paired with sort of a rogue-like action. Control humanoid labor and giant arms to uncover the mysteries of the world of this roguelike action adventure developed by Alpha Wing Incorporated. And then Haruka, Beyond the Stars, sort of a interesting RPG, Atelier Minmina as the name of the company. They call it a juvenile sci-fi RPG. Yeah, it's very cutesy, sort of 3-dimensional combat looking style. So you're walking through this environment. It looks really, really cute. Of course, you've got your different anime-looking characters, part sci-fi, but it looks really, all the different scenery looks really great. HARUKA Beyond the Stars, check it out. And then the last game that they brought to the show, which is called Million Depth. The description is craft your weapons as you explore through a million underground floors of fallen Earth to uncover mysteries and search for the truth about you in this action strategy game developed by Cyberspace Biotope. All of these games, you should definitely check them out on Steam. Like I said, I'm going to provide a link to Playism's page so you can check those out. That was day 2. Day 3, I saw a game from Upside Down Bird Studios, and it was called Shroom Siege. I don't know how to explain it, but it's got this beautiful art style to it that's almost like painted, sort of Eastern watercolor almost style. You're playing against each other. So what they describe it as is Shroom Siege is a fast-paced strategic multiplayer game where you control a shroom and you mount other characters, sort of an action strategy, definitely a party game, but you can win in one of 3 ways. Military victory, which is defeating the other team's samurai 3 times. Economic victory, which is spread your spore across the map. And slug victory, which is move your slug to your own goal. So, yeah, it's really a lot of fun. Very cool looking, very unique style to it. Check it out. The next game that I saw was a new VR game that MetaQuest, I think they kind of sponsored. It is called Exercise Your Demons, like in exercise, like lifting weights and stuff. The description: let's get pumped, unleash your inner beast, and battle back hordes of demons and beads of sweat in Exercise Your Demons with the finest fitness trainers of the Infernal Gymnasium guiding your every move. You'll throw down in your living room to save the world. So I talked to one of the developers at VRSoft, and I was told that they're basically taking advantage of the MetaQuest's new, I think it's MetaQuest Pro, but they've got an improved external camera. So it's got augmented reality. It's kind of a mixed VR, AR kind of thing. So yeah, they've been developing this. Their previous game was God of Rifts, Battle for the Metaverse, which is more of a rhythm game. Felt kind of Beat Saber-y, but this seems to be a very unique workout. You're fighting, you're punching a lot of enemies and stuff kind of game. Really cool. We move on to the Mythwalker demo by Nant Games. Angela Austin introduced me to 2 folks working on this. Jesse Snyder, who is the creative director, and David Oakers, who is the lead animator. This is a mobile game, and it's currently in closed beta, I believe in Australia, and it's going to launch worldwide on iOS and Android later this year. So the story is adventurers meet a mysterious guide known as the Child who seeks Earth's help to save her world, Mythera. Players take on quests as one of 3 playable classes: warriors, spellslingers, or priests. More to be added later, of course. From the home hub of Highport, players engage in various activities to help them on their quest. Out in the world, they can find mini-games that yield valuable materials for crafting. Navigators and tap-to-move features allow players to interact with points of interest and engage in combat without physically moving. They were talking about the mythos. It sounds like the game world was really well thought out and the whole story behind the game. The creative director, Jesse, he is a big fan of geocaching. And so that was sort of the starting point, because I know that one of my best friends is really into geocaching stuff. So this whole geolocation style of games where you go throughout your world, sort of an augmented reality kind of thing, is kind of something that I've been trying to get my friend into. Haven't found the right game to do it. This is an RPG. I think I mentioned previously that when I went to PAX last year, I started playing Monster Hunter Now, which I was playing it for a while. It's sort of an action-y kind of game where you can, build up your character, get different weapons, so on and so forth, and defeat these monsters. But then at a certain point, probably, I don't know, about a couple months ago, after playing it for nearly a year, it just got to the point where it was just like, I just want something new. These types of games, that's the risk, I think. I played Mythwalker, and it's fine. It's got good graphics. It's well thought out. The whole premise and the mythos and things like that, really great. Mini games could use some work, in my opinion. They're pretty basic, but I haven't had a chance to walk around with it for weeks and kind of fit that in. Just playing it for about 10 minutes is much different than playing it for weeks. They're different things, like give you enough variety in a game. But my concern, and I said this, is what is the unique thing that this brings to this market, which is already very saturated? Something like the lore, that's fine, but you need some sort of a hook. And I think it does a lot of things really well, but it's just competitively, I don't think it's quite enough to maintain. I mean, we'll see once the new stuff comes out, but all this stuff that it does, I've seen this type of game before, and it keeps my interest for months. But then at a certain point, I just lose interest. And if you're going to sustain something like that, I wish Nant Games the best of luck on this. And I want to try it when it comes out, get into it and see where they built this. My instinct is you need to come up with something that's unique. And one idea that I came out of the meeting and that I had was sort of, I think the concern with hiding notes or hiding things in the environment, like you do with a geocache. You will hide a thing or a little tchotchke or a little note to sign or whatever. You don't want to necessarily give people the free rein to put all sorts of profanity and whatnot in their notes. However, I think you could do it in a way where as a character, you can hide things in the world for other people to find, and then other people can go on quests to find these things. It might be something that's a little bit advanced for what the game is built for right now, but I think that's part of the joy of geocaching, is doing that kind of exploration and figuring out the clues and figuring out how to get to the place where you find this thing. That's the whole point. And if you want to capitalize on the geocaching thing, I think that would be something to do that hasn't been done before. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, you can do actual geocaching to get this, but I think putting it into a game would be something that's very unique. You could hide something for someone else to find and then be notified that so-and-so found it or someone found it or whatever. I mean, I think it would be really cool to do that, but once it comes out, I'm really excited to check it out. Thanks to all the folks who showed me the Mythwalker demo. I'm interested in seeing what you guys have for your final release and checking it out when you do release it. So thank you so much. The next game I played was Highway Police Simulator, which was billed as a debut demo, developed by Z Software, published by Aerosoft. So the Highway Police Simulator, which is a U.S. police simulator, American Highway Patrol, where you solve cases, chase criminals. The demo that I played involved driving to the scene of an accident and then investigating that accident. Their previous game was the Autobahn Police Simulator, and they have a series of these Autobahn Police Simulators, but the Highway Patrol Simulator is, I guess, for the U.S. market. So what happens is there's a scene of a crime. You see what happened. You draw out the diagram. You investigate. You send this information. It just didn't seem like it was polished enough yet. The characters didn't speak. Their mouths didn't move. Very old-looking sort of graphic style. The scenery was beautiful, but the actual characters, the way they moved, very slow. The driving was pretty darn good, but something about the whole case piece was just a little bit off. There's an accident, and then you have to wall off people who are trying to get through. So the first thing you need to do is put down plastic cones. You put down 3 cones and then you're done. You can put them anywhere in the environment too. And then you start investigating the scene of the crime. Now, the one that I investigated here, after you could talk to the different people, and with no mouth movement or facial movement, trying to determine whether a person is lying or not. You know what I mean? That would make this game really good, as if you could actually see an actor, but with no facial movements or any talking or anything like that. It's very difficult, other than just selecting the various choices, to determine whether or not this person's guilty. One thing I thought was funny was I was looking around and I found something on the ground and it said drug crumbs, which is not, I said, you know what, you might want to change that, because it like drug residue maybe, because I've never called them drug crumbs ever. But, you know, I'm not super impressed, but we'll see if they make some improvements. I may check it out later on, though. Check it out on their Steam presence. And they've got a bunch of different sort of police-themed games that look like, you know, they've got varying levels of complexity there. The Autobahn Police Simulator series. But hopefully they can make some significant improvements to Highway Police Simulator. I asked the gentleman who was showing me the game if you could play the cat game. And I said, you really need to watch the movie Super Troopers, because then you'll get it. If there was a Super Troopers themed game, my gosh, that would be amazing. So check that out. The next game I saw was Fish Game by A Shell in a Pit, which is Gordon McGladdery, who is a creator, designer, and composer. That is the gentleman, as Shell in a Pit, who worked on the soundtrack for Pacific Drive. And we were talking about his Fish Game and his first, you know, title, this being it, which is an aquarium simulator. It is freshwater aquarium simulator. He's got all sorts of different ways where you can buy fish. It's not like a breeding sort of thing. It's basically buying and putting them in an aquarium and watching the aquarium and making sure that you keep it in good health. It's got statistics on things like the amount of oxygen versus the number of fish. Some pretty complex systems, it looks like, in the background, along with this sort of being able to design your own aquarium. So it's kind of a cozy sort of thing, but you also have to kind of manage the environment to be successful. It is available now. Shell in a Pit, that's the audio and trailer production studio in Vancouver, Canada. So they do a lot of music and sound effects. But this Fish Game is the first original IP. So check it out. I'll put in the show notes their website. The next game that I played was Kriegsfront Tactics by Toge Productions, which is an Indonesian-based indie game company. I don't know if you saw one of my posts on social media, but they gave me some really cool coffee-related stuff, like a coffee bag, sort of like a tea bag, except with coffee. I believe they were there with those because they were also the studio that is responsible for Coffee Talk, the Coffee Talk series of games. But this Kriegsfront Tactics is sort of more of a turn-based mech combat game, which I've got to be in a mood for, but this one was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed what little I played of it. Really cool, but this is the only one that I played. Check out their page to see all that they've got available, including Coffee Talk. Yeah, Toge Productions, really a lot of fun. Thank you for the coffee and the coffee-flavored candy. Finally, on day 3, Alterium Shift, which is by Dratzy Games LLC. Jeff Kamazi is who I was speaking to. It is a 2.5D experience that's inspired by classic 2D JRPGs such as Secret of Mana. A lot of fun to play, very much like those old school games. I didn't really get too much into the story so far, but let me give you what they have as their description. The story is embark on a journey through the living world of Alteria and experience its dynamic quests, unique turn-based combat, and choice-driven storylines, 3 branching narratives, and unforgettable characters. Alterium Shift is a retro-inspired JRPG that offers a new adventure with every playthrough. So what they give is some of the features: turn-based combat, 3 character paths, special abilities. Fishing. Always with the fishing. Everyone wants fishing. I don't know why, but people want fishing in their games. Definitely check it out if you like those types of games. Wishlist it on Steam, and I will put their website in the show notes. They also were very nice. I left my headphones there because I was kind of in a rush to get out of the hall after they closed. Apparently there was some sort of a locking problem where all the things would be locked down at a specific time, so everyone had to leave by a specific time. Anyway, I was rushed and I used my own headphones. They held on to them for me, so thank you for not stealing my headphones. So I got an email going, "Hey, I remember you were the last one there. I think you left your headphones." So thank you. On day 4, I saw a few games. Anton Blast, which is developed by Summit Sphere and published by Summit Sphere in cooperation with, I believe, Joystick Ventures. Anton Blast is very much, feels sort of like Earthworm Jim cross with Sonic the Hedgehog, like that kind of 2D platform. I say 2D because, there are segments where you can travel back and forth between the foreground and the background, which is kind of an interesting game mechanic. But it is, at its core, it's a 2D platform game. They funded it on Kickstarter, so the full game is set to release in November on Windows and Switch. Anton Blast is described as a action-adventure puzzle platformer. This action-packed retro platformer featuring a destructive twist to the classic gameplay and hand-animated pixel aesthetics inspired by the Game Boy Advance. Silky smooth platforming and intense escapes combined in a bombastic adventure. Anton Blast follows the hapless drunkard, Dynamite Anton, as he embarks on a journey across the Backburner Peninsula after his prized spirits collection is stolen by Satan himself. In a fit of jealous rage, exploding with anger, Anton seeks to exact revenge the only way he knows how, by acting as a one-man demolition crew and blowing up hell itself. It was a lot of fun, very retro feeling, gave me a lot of feelings of nostalgia to playing all those Sega. It really did remind me a lot, just the speed and everything of a Sonic the Hedgehog. Maybe a little faster than it was back then, but it felt really fast back then. No, I think it's a fun game. I hope it comes to consoles too at some point. Definitely worth checking out. Boiler City, all the way to the gates of hell. Anyway, the next game I played was a game called Honeycomb: The World Beyond, which is billed as a survival sandbox kind of game. Frozen Way Games. You sit down on the planet of Soda 7 and you explore this world. On your journey, you gather resources, you craft your items, do experiments and stuff. One thing I got to do was ride on the hoverboard, which is really cool. With the exception of the hoverboard pieces, a lot of what you're doing is first person. And it seems like a lot of this would really translate well into a VR sort of scenario. But like I said, maybe the hoverboard pieces, when you're on the hoverboard, it switches to a third-person perspective. It's one of those survival games. Doesn't feel too punishing. But I didn't play a ton of it. I got to do a few tasks and collect a few things and make some stuff. But apparently this is coming out towards the end of the year. This year, Frozen Way Entertainment. So check it out. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Honeycomb: The World Beyond. And then I saw a really cool game developed by Pine Creek Games and published by Noodle Cake Studios, I think. Chris Bennett Winters, the director and indie game publisher and self-publishing support director of Pine Creek Games. Winterboro, City Mouse comes back to the country and has to live off the land kind of thing, where he goes back to his country home. It's a survival game where you collect things in the environment and then you've got to use them to make it through the winter. It is inspired by a lot of your storybook kind of styles. We talked a little bit about the different styles that he is inspired by as far as this kind of storybook look. Winterboro by Pine Creek Games. Inspired by nature, art, and fairy tales, which we interpret into the games with curiosity and love. Our games are designed to be fascinating worlds that are easy to step into and enjoy while still offering challenge, excitement, and depth that you can experience at your own pace. Definitely check out these screenshots of Winterboro. It looks pretty amazing. The author that I was talking about, Eric Sloan. Yes, Eric Sloan did a lot of these illustrations about colonial sort of times and early settlement of North America, but just drawings of that and some of the tools and things that they used. Reverence for Wood is the one that I remember the most. Oh, Museum of Early Tools. That's another one. Diary of an Early American Boy. All those books, I was fascinated by all those illustrations. For some reason, that kind of style sort of reminded me of this Winterboro game. So definitely check that out. And finally, last but not least, Imaginary Game Studios. The two gentlemen that I had interviews with came on the show, Christian and Eric. Christian is in Japan right now, but when he comes back, we're going to do a show. He said Imaginary, but I'm gonna see if he changes his mind. And then Eric and I are gonna figure out what word we're gonna do. We have a couple of ideas, but we'll see. So I finally got a chance to play Rogue Climber, and it was a lot of fun. It kind of a simple idea, just ascending vertically, but I can see myself playing that for quite some time. It's a first-person perspective. I played through the first portion of it. They said I got to a decent height. I don't know. Apparently the kids absolutely love this game. Definitely check out Rogue Climber on Steam. Unfortunately, it's not going to come out on the Mac, but maybe I can bribe the boys to do it. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, the description is, you've only got a short time to climb. An army of enemies and traps are waiting to stop you. Manage your equipment, hone your build, and master your platforming techniques to climb higher than anyone before you. I really enjoyed my time with it. I'm excited to see where they take that, and we can talk about where they are in development when they appear on the show, hopefully in the future. So, that was my PAX. A couple other things that I saw, not really game related. Bateman Labs, the folks who made the furniture, who I got into a talk about Poangs, they have a new piece of furniture that they're developing. So check that out on their website, Bateman Labs. We tried to get them on the show earlier, but they've been really busy with their furniture business, of course. And now, just had a chance to say hello and talk to them. That was cool. I also stopped by and talked to the owner of Dragon Roast Coffee, which is a coffee company. I want to say it's in Colorado, but apparently they're going to be branching out into the Arizona market because Arizona has a big coffee market out here, especially for what Dragon Roast Coffee does, which is in-house roasting. So that's kind of a cool connection that I made, and they seemed interested in being a guest on the show. We can talk about coffee, which everyone should love, but probably not. What was the last one? Oh, roast. So I had a chance to stop by. There is a board game called Roast that is coming out. I believe it's fully funded as of now as far as Kickstarter, but I went and stopped by. It's a two-brother duo who created this game, a card game. Really cool. Check it out. Roast. I will put in more information as I get mine. I invested some money in their project. It looks like it's a lot of fun. Both brothers seem to be interested in being on the show at some point, but it was an interesting sort of way that they created this game and kind of figured out which cards to use and which cards to scrap, and just kind of an interesting evolution of the game. So hopefully when it actually is officially released, we can get them on the show. That's what I saw this year. Really a lot of fun. Next year, I want to make sure that I do more interviews on the floor because I've kind of figured out what I want to do with that. It will be a lot easier and a lot quicker, I think, to publish those. So I'm going to make an effort to do that next year. Seeing a lot of these games is really cool, but I would much rather talk to and interview these developers and find out about what makes them tick. I mean, you guys hear what stuff I like all the time, right? Well, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast, a PAX retrospective. My name is Ben, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. Have a wonderful day. Bye.